Hey again, everyone, and I'm going to show you the process of my octopus painting. Um, you can, you've probably seen that I did this as a stream to begin with, and now I'm just kind of doing a time lapse just to show you kind of a quicker version, so you don't have to sit through 2 hours of just kind of hanging out. So I'm starting with the background and I'm just kind of flicking a whole bunch of acrylic paint onto the background to give it a nice splashy look. Works really well with water. So I use cerulean, ultramarine blue, turquoise, lime green, and white. And then just kind of going through and dabbing and layering more and more splatters of paint. And then for the octopus, I went ahead and wiped up a lot of the texture just so it doesn't confuse me when I go in to actually add layers of paint, and it makes it easier to build that color on top of. So now I'm going in and I'm adding some of the highlights, kind of going in initially with the yellow, and I like to dab occasionally with a paper towel just to kind of expedite the drying process so it doesn't take forever. Now I'm laying in my shadows. I used a turquoise color that I already used in the background for the shadows. And now I'm just going in and adding definition. And a lot of these parts I'm just going to go and kind of pull these tones out once everything dries so I can layer colors on top. Now I'm going in and I'm adding orange, and since I have a blue background, it takes a lot of layers of color to make the orange really stand out and communicate as orange, which is totally fine. I love the layering process. And yeah, it's just a matter of building and building. But also, I like the reason why I used blue as the base and didn't mask any of it out is one, I didn't have any masking fluid at the time. But also, I think the blue adds a really nice dimension when you're layering orange on top of it, because the shadows tend to recede more. It's a lot more muted, and then as you build and build, you end up with a really vibrant orange in comparison. And yeah, I kind of realized that the light was sort of messing around with the picture quality, so I turned off my overhead light, and now I just have kind of regular lighting and incandescent light. I think it is in the basement, which is where my workspace is. So, and I mean, there's a lot of wet paint, and also the ink is very reflective. So that's going to be something that I'm going to have to learn how to work with better in the lighting in the future. But now you're starting to see a lot of the highlights that are building. Well, that's actually probably more mid-tone at that point. But yeah, I added a little bit of white acrylic ink, and that's a lot more opaque than some of the colors I was using beforehand. So it starts giving, it brings out the orange a lot more. And yeah, I have to kind of take into account exactly how much paint is loaded on and how wet it is, because my surface is at an angle. So I want to make sure that paint isn't dripping down the paper that I don't want dripping. But yeah, this was a lot of fun because there's so many different surfaces and textures going on with it. Yeah, and I really love cephalopods, so. And part of the reason why my desk is such a mess is, as you can see kind of off to the side, I use it as a surface sometimes when I just kind of want to put a test swatch and kind of make sure I don't have excess paint on my brush. And eventually, once it gets loaded up, I clean it off by using nail polish remover, which helps break down the paint and comes off just like nail polish would. Now I'm going through and adding a lot finer highlights. And for my highlights, it looks white, but it's actually just a really pale yellow. I've talked about it at length in my streams, but you rarely ever see a pure natural white or a pure natural black. It's usually a really light or really dark, shade or tint of an actual color that, by comparison to everything else, you just kind of perceive as white or black. So, and actually now that it's blending out, you can see a lot more of those yellow tones.